Broadcasting live from Santiago on CaminoFM.com and 102.7 FM in high definition. You're listening to Camino FM.
People change along the Camino, or the Camino changes people in different ways and at different times. So I was raised Catholic, and there is a piece in the Bible about God's voice appearing to Moses out of a burning bush. And so growing up, I used to kid about, where's the burning bush in the middle of the living room with a voice that tells me what to do, where to go, how to do it. It just never really was there. And so on the Camino, I was kind of looking for the same thing. I was looking for the burning bush with the voice that said, this is your purpose. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you were supposed to be. And that didn't happen. Now, when you leave the Camino and you come back to your life, the best advice, and I heard this at the Mass, is that you bring Camino back with you. You never leave it. It never leaves you. And if you have brought it back with you, that voice or whatever it is that you're dreaming of, desiring, looking for, that will come to you.
Classic hits and new music. Camino FM.
The Way of St. James. James was one of Jesus Christ's apostles who found himself in Spain in the wake of Christ's death. He returned to the Holy Land and was martyred, his followers taking his body back to Spain, where he was entombed in a field. And his body was discovered by a shepherd 800 years later, and the Spanish built a majestic cathedral to house his remains, and built a city in his name, Santiago de Compostela, St. James under a field of stars. Pilgrims walk the many and varied Caminos, and most arrive at Santiago de Compostela to visit James's crypt beneath the cathedral. They attend the Pilgrim's Mass, and if you're lucky, you'll get to see the swinging of the Boat of Humiro, a huge silver and gold thurible swung from the cathedral ceiling. That pulley system upon which the ropes glide and swing was installed in 1604. Boat of Humiro is Galician for smoke expeller, and the thurible smokes as it swings the length and breadth of the vast nave and transept. It's one of life's great adventures, the Camino, and seeing the Boat of Humiro swing at the cathedral at the end is the perfect way to finish. It gives one a chance to reflect. And in this chaotic, fast-paced life we all live, we ought to take more time to reflect. I had a birthday recently, and my younger sister sent me a picture of me and my 4 younger siblings. It must have been about 1977, I reckon. I must have been about 11. We're all smiling, 4 boys and my younger sister. She's giving the photographer the thumbs up. It's a black and white photo, so I'm thinking it was probably taken by my eldest brother Mark, who went through a phase of taking photographs and developing them in a homemade darkroom downstairs at our home in country Queensland. That photograph is a reflection. It's a moment in time. And the Camino provides so many moments in time, so many points of reflection. James Sage, who featured with his son Leo in last week's episode, talked about pausing along the Camino to reflect on moments and places he'd been on his previous Camino. And he knew some of those places would make him sad or happy, but he was able to reflect. I jotted down a quote once, I don't remember where it was, and it was attributed to Holmes, but I'm not exactly sure who Holmes is. In moments of quiet reflection, our minds embrace the sea that we have crossed. We all have crossed so many seas, and here we are, pilgrims. Well, my pilgrim this week has not walked the Camino. He plans to walk the Camino, but he is most definitely on his own Camino, his own pilgrimage. Robert Henry is on the line from Ohio in the United States. Welcome, Pilgrim.
Thank you, Dan. Great being on here.
We're going to talk about your pilgrimage in a moment, but I want to get to know you a little first. Your email signature says, Adjunct Professor Robert Henry. What is an adjunct professor?
An adjunct or adjunct professor is one who is basically contracted semester by semester. So what it is I don't actually, I work as a kind of private contractor. I don't actually work for the college, except I'm contracted for them. So, if, let's say, one semester they only need me to teach one course, then I'm only contracted for that one course. Whereas if I worked for the college, then they would just kind of dump how many ever on me.
Right.
So as an adjunct, you just sort of kind of independent contractor in a sense, and you just courses as they come. So
what is your speciality?
I teach philosophy. I teach right now. I'm teaching medical ethics, business ethics, and actually this semester I'm teaching 2 Intro to Humanities courses for a dual credit course for high school students that will get college credit. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty neat.
Wow, that's really interesting. Your email signature also says, "Never look to a motionless face for memories. Life is found in the pace, not the chemistry." Let me just ask you, how did you discover this podcast?
I discovered it because I was looking up podcasts that had to do with the Camino. I had become very much interested in the Camino de Compostela, a couple of years ago. And particularly in the past year, I've been fascinated with it. And I was just trying to sort of, take in as much as I could. And I found your podcast, and I was really taken by it because it wasn't just. I listened to some YouTube videos of individuals that talked about some of the practical aspects of doing the Camino, but yours was more of a personal journey. Individuals talking about their own personal journeys, whether it's spiritual, religious, inner, whatever, and that really connected with me. I thought it was something that really, meant more than anything about what it means to be a pilgrim. Yeah. So that's why, that's how I found your podcast.
So tell us about "Never look to the motionless face for memories. Life is found in the pace, not the chemistry." Why do you have that in your email signature?
It's funny. It's a funny story. I used to write poetry in my early 20s, mid 20s. And when I was in college, I had a professor, and I put that as my tagline on my emails. And he was like, "Wow, what is that?" And I said, "It's from a poem I had written called a Dry Creek Bed." And basically in the poem, I was trying to illustrate the concept that the soul was, or the spirit or the soul was kind of like the water that that fills up a creek bed, and once that evaporates, it goes into the air and it changes form, but you still have the dried up creek bed, and the dried up creek bed kind of represents our bodies. When you see a body, when you see someone who has passed away, you just see that dried up creek bed, and that line particularly was an attempt to try to comfort people, particularly at funerals when they were forced to look at the remains of someone that had passed away, that person's not there. It's a dried up creek bed. That the joys, the sorrows, the passion, all the things that you loved about that individual when they were alive is not there. It's evaporated into the air. It's gone on to another mode of existence. And that's why I said, never look to a motionless face for memories, because life is found in the pace, the movement, right? It's dynamic. It's electric. I can't think of the name of the playwright, Eugene O'Neill. Actually, he said that our lives are like this electrical symphony. I'm paraphrasing him terribly, but something like that. And that's what that's where I continue to quote my. I hate to quote my own work because I'm not like this great poet, but all I know is that one of my old professors in my undergrad years really liked it. So I was like, well, if he liked it, then I guess I like it too.
Yeah, I really like it. Never look to a motionless face for memories. Life is found in the pace, not the chemistry. That's right. It's found in the movement, in the journey, in the step by step, day by day living, isn't it? I really like it. You're currently on a pilgrimage in the United States, Robert, walking from Cincinnati to Maria Stein, Chapel of the Holy Relics. Firstly, how far is that journey, that pilgrimage?
That it's about 100 miles. I actually just finished it last week. Actually,
Right.
I finished it last week. It's about 100 miles. I was going to take me 6 days, but I really just went through and finished it on the Friday, and I walked about 26 miles the last day, and finally made it, and it's been incredible. It's an incredible journey.
Are you walking highways? Are you on the roadside, or are they trails?
No, it's the roadside. It's not. Okay. Yeah, it's not. It's. I wish it were trails. It's not as, as aesthetic as the actual Camino.
Is it signposted, or is it just a journey that you've undertaken yourself?
Here's the strange thing, and I don't know much about it, but I know that there's a collection of churches in that region of kind of central western Ohio. It's kind of close to the border of Indiana, and there are several holy sites, and there are pilgrimages that they have. I don't know if any, and supposedly I was speaking with someone when I finished the pilgrimage, and they were telling me about it, that evidently there is a path somewhere that goes from somewhere up in that region, one of the other churches that are near there, to Cincinnati, but I don't know personally anyone that has done it. And this particular trail, like I said, I take a U.S. highway. It's not an expressway. It's just an old, it's a 4-lane road, and there's a lot of room on the side, and I just walk along it, and I walk along bean fields and corn fields. I mean, lots and lots and lots of corn fields, and it's desolate. So it's very just sort of dry, like the cornfields are,
Yeah. So tell us about Maria Stein Chapel of the Holy Relics.
Maria Stein, it has the second largest number of holy relics in the country. The largest is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but this is the second largest. And I'm totally going to butcher this story because I don't have it, at hand. But all I know is I read about the history behind it, and evidently there was a priest. He had come from Europe, and he wanted to start some churches in the Ohio area, going up. We're talking from the Ohio River Valley, where I live, Cincinnati area, all the way up to like Cleveland, way up north. So he went about building churches, and his bishop had given him a collection of holy relics. One of them included the remains of Saint Victoria, which was a 3rd century martyr. She was killed in somewhere in the Roman Empire, and also some relics that are associated with the apostles. I'm not sure exactly what specific items. All I know, when I made it there, I was looking at all the items. But it was really busy. There were actually a lot of people. It was during the prayer of Fatima, so there were a lot of people there, not on pilgrimage like I was, but they had taken buses and things like that. But it's an incredible place. It is absolutely beautiful, and you just feel this sense of holiness. I mean, you just feel the sense of I can't even describe it. It's just it's so peaceful. And I prayed. I'm Episcopalian, actually. I'm not even Roman Catholic, but I prayed the rosary like several times, and I was in this prayerful sort of space, and it was incredible. It was just awesome.
Yeah, that's right. The entire remains of St. Victoria are there. It's a fascinating story, actually. She was North African nobility and converted to Christianity as a child, but refused an arranged marriage. And on her wedding day, she jumped out the window of her parents' home and went to a nearby church, and sort of that was her sanctuary, if you like, and she dedicated her life to God. But she was arrested for not going through with the marriage, and her brother said, "Oh no, she's insane." But then she said no to the judge, "No, I'm not insane," and convinced the judge that she was entirely sane and was choosing a life dedicated to Christ rather than this arranged marriage. And the judge said, "Well, by convincing me, you're now sentenced to death." And so she was martyred, yeah. We don't know how old she was. She was most probably just a child. But her remains are there in that church. And what a wonderful story to tell of faith and dedication and commitment. And here she lies in amongst all these other relics of saints and holy people from all over the world. Yeah, it's an amazing place. I went online and had a look at it. It's extraordinary. That shrine really is quite something. It must have been quite emotional for you. Tell us, Robert, were you walking consecutive days? Did you do it all in one go?
Here's the thing. I initially had planned on doing that. In fact, I even had arranged, I had made some sleeping arrangements. I was going to sleep in a tent because this route, it doesn't go through very large towns. It goes through very, very small rural towns, and there's not a lot of albergues, Yeah. So, but there are a lot of churches and other places, and I had contacted several churches, and they were just so overwhelmingly helpful. I mean, it was great. I can't say enough about all of the places that I'd reached out to that were willing to help me and were excited about this. But originally that was my plan. But unfortunately, I had some issues with my pack, and I just couldn't have all the stuff I was going to have to take with me to sleep overnight. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I had made alternative arrangements to walk and then get picked up and dropped off, or brought back home, and then it was a lot of driving, Yeah. But, and I couldn't do it consecutive days, but it was a lot of them were pretty close to every couple days or so. So
yeah. Well, if it's good enough for Art Garfunkel when he walked across America, it's good enough for you, I reckon. To be dropped off and picked
exactly.
up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I love that you called it the Camino de Maria Stein, or the Way of St. Victoria. I really love that. It's great. And then, Robert, in that email, that very first email you sent me, this line leapt out at me. "I'm walking to honour my 2 sons that passed away just this past year." Tell us about that journey.
Well, it's tough. Okay, so I have 4 sons. 2 of them have passed on. The 2 that passed was Sammy and Joey. Sammy was 18. He and Joey suffered from muscular dystrophy. They were also had very profoundly on the spectrum for autism, so they were nonverbal. They had intellectual disabilities as well. But they had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is just a devastating condition, because you're basically, it's a neurological disorder where your brain doesn't send the right signals to your body to produce the dystrophin, which is how we reproduce muscle tissue, muscle mass. And unfortunately, their bodies couldn't do that, so they were bound to wheelchairs. And when they were young, they could walk, and they probably, Joey lost his ability to walk when he was trying to think about 10 or 11, whereas Sammy lost his a little earlier. He was resistant to the medication to some degree, and he passed earlier than Joey did at an earlier age. But in November of 2021, my son Sammy Henry passed away. He was in the hospital. He had a really bad cold. It wasn't COVID. A lot of people but it wasn't a COVID issue.
Yeah.
It just he would get pneumonia a lot. He'd been getting pneumonia a lot. So we took him to the hospital in October. It was right around the time of my wife and I's anniversary. And we thought it was just your typical, well, he's going to go to the hospital for a few days. But he went into cardiac arrest, and they brought him back. But after that instance, his brain had lost a lot of oxygen, and he was never able to recover. And on November 2nd, I was at home while my wife was there, and I was going to go back up there, and she called me and she said, "It's time. His lungs are filling up with liquid, and he's going to go." So I just ran up there, and I just held my hand on his head as he just breathed his last, and it was rough, and it just changed our lives. And then after that, most of the time when someone in your life passes away or you have tragedy, oftentimes I've noticed a lot of people tend to move away from God. They get angry at God. But I had been angry at God for a long time because of their condition, but it was this point where I actually got a much closer relationship, oddly enough, paradoxically enough, because I felt that God was with us. I thought of the term Emmanuel, God is with us. And in that room, I felt the presence of God, oddly enough, when he passed. And even though it was it was incredibly painful. We're still going through grief. Obviously, I cry every day. Yeah. But I felt God's presence. So after he passed, I was like, I had, of course, you hear this every time. Every person you talk to, they always say, and you know what movie I'm going to mention? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I had seen this movie before all of this had happened. I actually watched, these two priests have a YouTube channel, and they review movies. And one of them, they had the top 5 Catholic movies, and one of them was, of course, The Way. So I watched The Way, and it just blew me away. And ever since then, I didn't really know much about what pilgrimages were. I didn't understand them. And then I read Jack Hitt's book as well, the companion to that. And it really illuminated a lot of the mystery, the enigma behind what it is. So I decided to do this. I researched some holy places that were I guess within walking distance, 100 miles or so. Yeah. And that's where I found the Stein. And when I read the story of Saint Victoria, and I'm always forgetting it. It was really good that you eloquently read about it. But I thought this is just a beautiful story. So I decided to go on a pilgrimage. Well, I was going to go in April, and I had everything planned. I was going to leave that day. It was during spring break, and I was going to be out of school. I didn't have to teach. So I was going to walk, and my pack is too heavy. Right? Oh, and I was so upset. My wife was like, she knew I was really upset, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because about a week later, my son Joey, he also had he started developing a cold. It wasn't COVID. It was just he had some congestion. Yeah. Well, his heart, because of his condition, had been weakened, and he went into cardiac arrest in his bedroom. The paramedics took him, and I was freaking out, so I drove up there. And as soon as I got to Children's Hospital, which is great hospital, they said, "We need to talk with you in this room." And I was like, "Oh my God!" And they said, "We're working on him right now. We're giving him, CPR and all that, and we don't know. We don't know if he's going to make it." And I watched them, just keep pounding my son's chest, and then they stopped. And it was at 6:22, and he passed on April 28th. And it's just so. Losing 2 in less than a year, it's been hard. But I need it. The pilgrimage wasn't just for me though. I felt it was for them.
Yeah.
And it was for me. It was for everyone. I started seeing things differently because I saw the temporality of this world, and going back to the never look to a motionless face for memories. That.
Yeah.
The temporality of the world, and I had begun to think, it's so important. In Europe, you have these ancient, these ancient roads. They were built by the Romans, and they built them for commerce. I mean, they built them to get from one place to another.
Yeah.
Right. But the way, Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And there is a way, right? It's a path that we all take, right? It's an inner journey. But there's something about taking that inner journey and doing it with our bodies, just and recapturing these roads that have been made for commerce, for keeping us busy, the Marthas of the world, and especially the Marys, keeping us busy, and baptizing, consecrating them, dedicating them, to the spiritual. And this road, I baptized it with my tears, basically. And I'm not just saying, I had some headphones on. I was listening to some of Joey and Sammy's favorite music. And, fortunately, no one saw me as they were walking by, especially what days when it rained. But, I baptized the road.
Wow.
And I think that's what we do as pilgrims. We're baptizing the roads. We're taking these roads that were made for ways to make them the way, that to instantiate that inner journey and make it physical, and bring heaven to earth, bring the inner life to the outer world. And it was just amazing.
Wow. Wow, what a story. I suppose, Robert, the thing that fascinates me is that you're an academic. You're used to working through process and research to come to conclusions. And based on your studies, your education, you're used to finding finite understandings in a way. But has it been more difficult for you to process your son's deaths because you're used to things making sense, a sense of order in a way?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to, I had been dealing with this ever since
Sure.
back in 2006. I was working. This is before I was working in academia, but I got a call at work, and my sons, they were having issues walking, especially Joey, and we didn't know what was wrong. And I got the call. And my wife had told me that they were diagnosed with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And ever since that moment, from 2006 onward till this past year, that's when I had been struggling with coming up with answers, and I just don't have any, or I didn't have any. I still kind of, it's still, there's really no, there's no, I can come up with some logical, rational answers. I have all kinds of theories about the world, about how, about how we've fallen into sin. I've got all this stuff, how this world is kind of a shadow of that world, the Platonic thing and all. I've got all kinds of theories, but, I don't have any concrete answers.
I don't think there would be any answers, to be honest. I don't think that you could ever expect to have any answers. But did you include the quote, "Never look to a motionless face for memories, life is found in the pace, not the chemistry"? Did you include that in your email signature before your son's deaths or after?
I've had that. I've had that in my signature for years.
Right. Okay. So yeah.
It's kind of it's kind of weird. It's well, I had written that. I'd written that poem well before before my sons had been diagnosed. Sure. So I had no. Being a philosopher, when I was studying philosophy, even in my undergraduate, of course you think of death, right? That's and I always think of issues like life after death. What's the meaning of life? All these really profound questions about the world around us. And even though those questions hadn't really imposed themselves in a concrete, real, experiential way, because I was wet behind the ears. I was just, a young guy. I hadn't really had any serious life experiences. But I still, wrestled with these issues. Yeah. But of course now I've been, baptized in them, bathed in them.
Why are you walking alone, Robert? You mentioned that you had 2 other sons and a wife. Why are you undertaking this alone?
I've had, I have my cousin, which happens to live with me, actually. He had, expressed interest in it, but I didn't feel right going, walking with anyone. And my wife, she didn't really feel it was something she wanted to do. She felt it was something I needed to do myself.
Yeah, right.
And it's, the way death impacts us. It's even though we embrace each other. I embrace my wife, my sons. I have 2 other sons, and and they oftentimes feel a lot of guilt because they weren't born with this.
Sure.
And they often ask questions like, "Why me? Why was I born healthy?" And my brothers. So I know that they struggle with that as well. And but a journey like this, unfortunately, it's a very personal, individual journey.
I can't get over that, baptizing the path with your tears. It's just, I can't get over that. What you said was so beautiful. Your sons and wife, though, must know that this has been very helpful for you.
Yeah. I'm like my wife. She's just like, because she knows I can be a little grumpy, and and she's like, "You need this." My wife told me, "You need to," in fact, she was very pushy about it. She's like, "You need to do this," and I was like, "Are you sure? I don't want to inconvenience you or this." And she was like, "No, you need to do this." And she was very supportive, and I'm really happy about that. She was supportive.
Yeah.
My sons were supportive, but again, it's just something, you just have to kind of, do it alone, and things like that.
Are you praying while you walk, Robert? You mentioned about praying in the Maria Stein Chapel, but what about while you're actually walking?
While I was walking, just a lot of thoughts come to me. I guess at times I was praying. And it's so weird. I would walk. It's so weird because you walk through little towns, and I like Jack Hitt. Have you read his book, Jack Hitt's?
Yes.
And I like what he said about pilgrimages. He says, back in the Middle Ages, a pilgrimage was about distance. It was about going long distances because, we didn't have cars. We didn't have these means of transportation. But he says nowadays, we can get from one place to another in a blink of an eye. But if you slow things down and you space it out, right, in time as opposed to in space. And that really impressed upon me, because when you walk through these towns, if I were driving it would be nothing, but when you walk through it, you almost feel the vibrations, the energy. I don't want to sound like like some new ager, and like some but it does. You feel the energy. I really do. And when you walk through it, and you get to talk with people, I talked with people just walking by. I'd walk into a store, and they saw my trekking poles, and they would ask me what I was doing, and I even wore the traditional shell,
Yeah, great. Yeah.
And I also have a couple saints on my necklace. I have Saint Elizabeth Seton, which represents the health of children, and Saint Christopher. I wanted to get a Saint Bonapisa. I love Saint Bonapisa because Saint Bonapisa is the patron saint of the pilgrim, particularly in Spain. But I have 2 crosses that are that have a very small portion of the cremated remains of both my sons. So, and I wear those everywhere. And but I have those. So, when I walk into a store and they're talking to me and everything, they ask me, well, what are you doing? And in fact, I remember I was walking through this one town, Eaton, Ohio, and this woman literally stops in the middle of the road. She's like, "You walking for your health?" And I was like, "No, I'm on a pilgrimage. I'm walking to Maria Stein." And she just gave me this strange, she's kind of smiled, but it was kind of a strange look. And, it's just interesting to see, people's reactions when you tell them what you're doing.
You mentioned that you were listening to Sammy and Joey's music, and I imagine the rhythm of your walking is keeping you company, but you were taking part of them with you, weren't you? Because you're listening to the songs that they loved.
Yeah, and I'm not a dancer by any means, but there were a few times. Yeah, I was actually because you know how it is. You've walked long distances, right? So you get into a rhythm, and when you're listening to a song, I was doing these crazy I was twirling my trekking poles, and because there's a couple of goofy songs that Sammy really liked. He liked these various Pixar movies, and they'd have these kind of goofy, funky songs and stuff, and I'll be doing this little dance and stuff, and imagine the cars driving by are probably like, this guy's out of his mind. Stay away from that dude.
You see people on the Camino, and up ahead you see them do a little dance to themselves and think, how fabulous, they're really in their own space and really enjoying themselves because they have just a moment of exhilaration to sort of move out a dance step. It's so great. I love that look. So,
I do too.
Yeah. So you plan to one day walk the Camino. What do you hope to find there?
Well, for one thing, I think sharing, because it's one thing. I feel like a pioneer, because maybe someone's done this route. I don't know. I doubt it. It's possible, but I don't think anyone's done this specific route. So I feel like a pioneer. But I want to go somewhere where there's an ancient sort of, tradition, where you're going somewhere that so many other pilgrims through the expanse of time have been through and have gone. And, to share in that, right? To all these people that, who knows what they had gone through. And we're talking about princes and kings and priests and popes, have done nothing. And to share in this rich, incredibly rich tradition, I think, I have to do it. It's something I have, and I want to do it to honor them. I don't want to be all kooky and do what they did on the way, where I write their names, but I probably would, if on the diploma, I would probably write my son's names, because it's not, it's they. What it is when they were young, I used to hike with them, especially Joey. I put him on my shoulders, and I used to hike with him, and during those times, I carried him. Right? He was weak. He was weak, and I carried him. But now he's the strong one, and he's carrying me. So the way I look at it is, when I do walk the Camino, it will be them carrying me this time. It's their turn to carry me, because I'm the weak one, and they're the ones that are strong.
What do you make of this week's quote that I started with? In moments of quiet reflection, our minds embrace the sea that we have crossed.
I think with me, I would think that in life, you get so busy with the things that are going on around you. And sometimes and that's the whole point of a pilgrimage, is to slow things down. If you read a book, if you talk to someone, if anything, and you try to do it really too fast, you're going to miss so much, and you won't even get the meaning, the content. Life is a narrative, right? The life itself is a narrative. It's a story. It's a mythos. And if you live life, in this fast pace, just trying to get everything done, you miss it. And you have to not talk for a moment. You have to be quiet. Slow down. You have to listen. And if you don't do that, I think that you're going to miss out on a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah. So our minds embrace the sea that we have crossed. That sea, Robert, when you look back, is it calm or choppy?
I would say a little bit of both, depending.
Yeah.
It's definitely choppy in times. Before my sons passed away, I was I just struggled with a lot of things, just a lot of anger and just a lot of personal issues. And I think now in this period of my life, my sons speak to me as almost, on a mission from God. God is wanting to talk to me through them to tell me that I need to calm down. I need to listen, and I need to be in the moment.
Wow, what a wonderful gift from your sons.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Actually, too, I didn't tell you this. I've been writing reflections on the walk, and I'm considering. I don't know if I'm going to do this because so many people write, books about their journeys on a Camino, but this one would be a little different because I'm pioneering a new way, I guess, and I'm playing around with some titles. I came up with one called Codex Franciscan Camino de Maria Stein. Just some crazy stuff. Yeah. I can't say that, but do you mind if I read just a little excerpt?
I'd love you to.
Okay. At one point, this is on, let me see what day this is. I'm looking back. This is day 3. Okay, this is day 3. So, let's see. Drip, and like that, the rain was upon me. It wasn't isolated either. I could tell it was consistent, and by the look of the clouds coming in, it was going to intensify. I wriggled out of my pack, which I tightened the straps to put more weight on my upper back and made it harder to take off. I laid it down, rifled through a side pocket, and pulled out my rain gear, which was nothing more than a poncho of sorts and rubber socks to go over my shoes so that they don't get wet. Walking with wet shoes is a nightmare, and there's little chance I would make it even 10 miles in them. So fortunately, just as I put them on, the rain intensified. My pack was getting quite wet, so I unbuttoned my poncho and placed it over my backpack and wore it like a cloak. I didn't mind getting my shorts and my shirt wet. In fact, it was refreshing, albeit slightly cold. All through Camden, just for you, Camden's right outside of Eaton. It's this town up in Ohio. Although Camden, the rain came down, but as I made my way out of the hamlet, like a miracle from heaven, the rain gradually ceased. It wasn't long until I was able to take off my rain poncho and rain socks, and it was about that time I walked past a sign for Gasper. The community is hardly worth mentioning except for as a midpoint between Camden and Eaton. But one thing can be mentioned, there was an increase in the typical Ohio landscape with its endless fields of green stalks anchored by quaint farmhouses, elaborate barns, and occasionally some livestock. While trekking through this lull in my pilgrimage, hoping at any moment to see some sign I was near Eaton, just as if planted in the ground by the hand of God, a tacky, but nevertheless inspiring sign that read, "God's got this." And I can't say why it impacted me at all, but the loneliness of the road coupled with the emotional vulnerability I had as I was searching for a specific sign, I got the one I really needed to see. I don't even think the individual that put the sign up knew they were being used by God for just that moment. My jaded cynicism conjured up the image of some Trump-supporting redneck evangelical attempting to snatch from the jaws of hell some woeful sinner. But I must be far less judgmental and far more sympathetic. Sure, there are those that look out of the church windows through a foggy pane, but who's to say my windows are any less foggy? Anyway, no matter how corny the sign was, the message fell upon me like the rain back in Camden. That was just a brief,
Wow.
reflections.
That's great. Wow. So you could put down, I suppose, your thoughts and make some sort of formal narrative out of it, a book or a blog for sure. If you're writing like that on just day 3, yeah, that's magic. What a wonderful thing to write. So if in moments of quiet reflection our minds embrace the sea that we have crossed, look back for us, Robert. What's on the other side of the sea?
I think that the sea is like any landscape. It's constantly changing.
Yeah.
So, when Jesus was in the boat with the disciples, and the disciples saw the storm coming, they flipped out, right? And that's what we do in life, right? When we see the storms coming in life, we like flip out, right? We flip out. But I think what it does is when we see the ripples in the water, we see the storms, and then we see the calm. I think what we need is that calm inside of us at all times, and to not be sort of jarred by what we see, not to walk by sight, but to have that inner calm, and to know that even in spite of all the storms that are outside of us, that we are going to learn from it. We're gonna gain something from it. It might be painful, but we know that eventually, the storms will subside. There's a quote from my favorite author, by the way, George MacDonald, and there's a poem he wrote in my favorite book, which is At the Back of the North Wind. Great book, by the way. Anyways, there's a quote in this poem, and it says, "Sure as the summer, sure as the sun, the night and winter are shadows that run." And that's what it is, really. When we have these storms in life, they're nothing but shadows. They're shadows of something looming on the horizon. And when you see those storms come, when you see the rough water coming, we know that is the effect of something great in the distance.
What would a fitting memory of Joey and Sammy be like, Robert? How would you like to remember them?
Well, like Joey, for example, I think of his smile. Like literally, when he smiled, his eyes would just disappear. You see people when they smile. Sometimes people have kind of a feigned smile, or and I'm not judging people, but some people have just this sort of feigned because they can't express themselves, right? Some people, and it's not that they're not genuinely happy or whatever. It's just some people have awkward moments. But Joey was genuine in every moment, and when he smiled, his eyes just disappeared. Whereas where Sammy was more of a trickster. He liked to grate on your nerves sometimes, and sometimes he would get on my nerves so much sometimes, but I could tell that he was doing it because he was trying to get me to listen to him. He was trying to get me, to recognize his needs. And he was just a completely different personality. He was more of the practical kind, whereas Joey was the dreamer, And they would get on each other's nerves, both actually too. We went on road trips so many times with them. We took them to, we drove to Chicago with them. We drove out west to Denver, through South Dakota. We drove up to Boston. We drove to New York a couple times. And I tell you, pushing wheelchairs around downtown Manhattan is something else. But the police were really helpful. The police were really helpful. I tell you, the New York Police Department were just amazing. They were just so accommodating and really helped us. But it was something. Going to Rockefeller Center and that's one good thing. The experiences I had with them, and all the different places we would take them, was just magical.
Oh, I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. The last line here I have is that I hope you find what you're looking for, and I'm certain that that's a loving and cherished memory of Joey and Sammy, and a long and fruitful life with your wife and your other sons as well. Thank you so much, Robert, for writing to me to bring us a story of a Camino of a different kind, a journey you've undertaken as a pilgrimage, and it is more than a pilgrimage in my view. It's a journey of prayer, it's a journey of memories, it's a journey of reflection. And I want to send my blessings from me and my family to you and your family, Robert, and on behalf of all of the listeners in this Camino community, we want to send you our love and our time of reflection to help support you and your family. I can't wait to follow your Camino when you arrive in wherever you arrive, and walking in the footsteps of all of those priests and poets and popes and all of the blessed men and women before you, because it's going to be a great journey. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share my Camino story. Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.
Broadcasting live from Santiago on CaminoFM.com and 102.7 FM in high definition. You're listening to Camino FM. Broadcasting live from Santiago on CaminoFM.com and 102.7 FM in high definition. You're listening to Camino FM.
People change along the Camino, or the Camino changes people in different ways and at different times. So I was raised Catholic, and there is a piece in the Bible about God's voice appearing to Moses out of a burning bush. And so growing up, I used to kid about, where's the burning bush in the middle of the living room with a voice that tells me what to do, where to go, how to do it. It just never really was there. And so on the Camino, I was kind of looking for the same thing. I was looking for the burning bush with the voice that said, this is your purpose. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you were supposed to be. And that didn't happen. Now, when you leave the Camino and you come back to your life, the best advice, and I heard this at the Mass, is that you bring Camino back with you. You never leave it. It never leaves you. And if you have brought it back with you, that voice or whatever it is that you're dreaming of, desiring, looking for, that will come to you.
Classic hits and new music. Camino FM.
The Way of St. James. James was one of Jesus Christ's apostles who found himself in Spain in the wake of Christ's death. He returned to the Holy Land and was martyred, his followers taking his body back to Spain, where he was entombed in a field. And his body was discovered by a shepherd 800 years later, and the Spanish built a majestic cathedral to house his remains, and built a city